So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to a special episode of the Trauma Therapist Podcast, joined by Dr. Peter Levine. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Peter Levine received his PhD in medical biophysics from the University of California in Berkeley and also holds a doctorate in psychology from International University. Peter's worked in the field of stress and trauma for over 40 years and is the developer of Somatic Experiencing method. Peter's original contribution to the field of body psychotherapy was honored in 2010 when he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the United States Association for Body Psychotherapy. Peter's written a number of books, among them one of the most famous books, Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma. Peter, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me at such short notice. So first off, where are you right now? Where are you calling from?
I'm in Encinitas, California.
Okay.
North San Diego County.
Okay, got it.
A good place to be here right now.
Yeah. So, how are you, first off?
I'm doing okay. You know, my throat's a little sore because I've been doing a lot of interviews, and then I received another Lifetime Achievement Award from the Psychotherapy Network. So I was talking quite a bit of time for that. So
congratulations on that.
Thanks.
So, I mean, I wanted to reach out to you. Obviously, you're one of the main inspirations in this field. How about if we start kind of a macro level and dial it into more of a individual level about what people can do? I'd like to hear your thoughts generally on what is going on. And with regards to trauma and stress and so forth.
Well, I mean, of course, this is a time of a great deal of distress. And, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I'm not sugarcoating it. But it also offers some opportunities. First of all, I would change the labeling when they say social distance. I think really it should say physical distance, because we really need to connect socially. I mean, just you and I right here, in a way, where through this contact, we're co-regulating ourselves. Right. It's really, really important. So, and sometimes words mean a lot. So I think it's important to think that social contact is important. But of course, physical distance is also extremely important. And I said, what would I say? I would say a couple of things. Fear is something that physically happens in the body. Our guts tighten, our jaws tighten, our shoulders tighten and bracing, our guts twist and turn, and butterflies, and all of that. In a way, what it does is it tells us, it's registering what's going on in the body and tells us there's threat. Now, the thing about this kind of threat is that it's invisible. And, it's not like a threat that you can localize. But again, there are things that people can do. I really suggest when you're home to take time to really be with yourselves, to listen to music that moves you. Literally to let the music move you, to feel the music, to let your body move. And if you're with another, if you're fortunate enough with a family unit or a partner, dance together, move together, allow your body to move, because the threat is from outside, because it's not localizable, it's outside. And so again, we're unable to localize the threat and do something about it, but we can, again, do what is the most sensible things to do, which is to minimize, contact with other people physically. There's some exercises that I do that can be very helpful, especially when working with something like an unknown virus. And the idea here is to interrupt the feedback loop that's coming from the belly back up to our brains. I'll give you just a little physiology.
Yeah.
There's a nerve that goes from the back of the brainstem down throughout the whole body and connects with almost all the organs in below the diaphragm, as well as also the heart and the lungs. And what happens is when we see something horrible, somebody's hit by a car or something like that, our guts twist up. And that's the vagus nerve. That's the nerve that's winding around the body. Vagus is for vagabond, is the Latin to, yeah. So anyhow, this nerve is the largest nerve in the body. And over 80% of that nerve is sensory. In other words, it's actually taking information from our guts and relaying it back to our brains. And then, so what can happen is you see something that's really scary, horrible. You twist up. That twisting is then relayed up through that same vagus nerve and is amplified in the brainstem. So it maybe starts with a oh, then gets to oh, and then oh. And when it becomes chronic, we don't have any energy. It's like our life force has disappeared. And again, this is so important with this kind of a threat because it's something that actually the only way we know it, that we've had it, is again because of the distress. But if we have the distress, then it fools us into thinking that we do have the virus. So it's really important to uncouple that. So I'm going to give you a simple exercise. I'll do it first, and then I'll invite you, all of the people who are watching, to also do the exercise with me. So I take an easy, full breath, and on the exhalation, I make the sound woo, as though it's coming from my belly. And I let the sound and the air all the way out, and then just allow a new breath to come in, filling belly, and then chest, and then again repeat the woo. So I'll demonstrate it. I'll do it a couple of times, and then anybody who wants to join in, please. Now, it can bring up feelings. I want to say that. But I think it's much better to know your feelings than to not know your feelings, especially at a time like this. So here is an easy full breath. And I'm letting the breath and the air go all the way out. And then I'll let the breath come in on its own, filling belly, chest. And just rest. And notice sensations, feelings, thoughts, images, pictures. So I'm wondering if you're willing to say, Guy, what you're noticing right now.
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, it feels very meditative to me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That sound feels very, I don't know, I guess I associate that sound with monks in a sense that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. I mean, look, people have been chanting. Religions and spiritual traditions have been chanting for thousands of years, literally thousands of years. They probably 10,000s of years. And but this is a little bit different. This, I mean, there's a lot of overlap, of course. But the idea here is you want to change the information that's coming back up from the guts to the brain. So if we're shut down because we're perceiving this invisible threat, what we want to do is be able to come out of that shutdown so that we're able to engage in life and do the things that are necessary to protect ourselves and our loved ones. So what you're doing is, instead of this feedback loop with negative consequences, this amplification feedback of distress, you're now shifting that and saying, oh, okay, things are okay. And that is like a meditative state, but it's specific because the idea is to vibrate the sound literally coming from the receptors in the guts so that the all clear signal can be sent to the brain.
One of the things that I guess I really appreciated about what you're saying here from the get-go is, when I asked you a question and you responded, you didn't say, well, we have to remember to do this or think about this or do this. You right away was like, we need to engage our body. We need to move. We need to dance. We need to, and that, there's something about that just made me feel grounded all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, it really is about engaging our bodies. When I started to develop somatic experiencing in the early 70s, I was fortunate in a way that I didn't know, because the definition of trauma as PTSD was still another 10, 12 years, in the future. So I didn't know that it was supposed to be an incurable brain disorder, brain disease. And what I did discover is when things like bad things happen to us, of course, they happen also in the brain. They happen in the brain, but they equally happen in the body. And what we need to do in trauma, we brace in fear, we collapse in helplessness. And so what we need to do is have new experiences in the body that contradict those of the fear and the helplessness. And then the body is signaling to the brain that things are okay. And that's what we need to know. And we can also support each other. I would suggest, if you're together with somebody, to practice these exercises together. There's a Motown song that goes something like, it takes one to stand in the dark alone. It takes two to let the light shine through. So when we're guiding each other and being there together in these, as you call them, somewhat like meditative states, then we're able to have a little distance from what's happening. Because it's not helpful to be stirred up, to be stirred up, to be stirred up. Unfortunately, the most confusing kind of messages are being sent out by leaders. One leader is saying one thing, then another leader says something the opposite. And that's really, really a bad thing to do when you need to be calming people. Again, we don't want complacency, but we don't want people stirred up in panic. So, some years ago, number of years ago, this was after the 9/11 terrorist attack, and I was asked to be in a think tank on counterterrorism. And the people there were people from the Department of Defense, from the FBI, from the CIA, the State Department. I mean, these are not people that I'm usually in contact with. And everybody went around and, gave their name and, and what their background is. So when it came to me, I said my name. And I said, but I don't know why you invited me. I'm sort of the odd man out here. And they said, no, we've been following your work for the last several months. I said, ooh, I don't know if that's it's a little scary. And we want you to set up a sub think tank called TTOT, Take the Terror Out of Terrorism, is what they had wanted me to do. And one of the things I said is you have to have a consistent, believable spokesperson, somebody like a Walter Cronkite. I actually have a video of Walter Cronkite announcing President Kennedy's death. Very, very clear, very powerful, and also emotional. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. The only thing we have to fear is the fear itself, how right on that was. So again, that's not the clear messages we're getting now, so we have to even more rely on ourselves and our ability to self-regulate, so we're not stirred up. So being stirred up and being stressed, is one of the things that actually makes us more susceptible, not just to this virus, but to all kinds of other infections. And social engagement is a real important part of that. There's a wonderful video. People can see it on YouTube. I also used it in my lecture. It was really, really, really very, very special. It takes place in Italy, in Naples, and I think in Rome. And people come to their windows or on their balconies, and they start playing instruments. And if they don't have instruments, they get pots and pans and bang the pots and pans together. And so they're physically separated, but they are socially connected and in rhythm with the music. That's the right thing to be doing. Those are the lessons we need to be taking.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was posted recently, right?
Yeah.
That was
Yep.
how Italy was, in a sense, part of it was dealing with this. Yeah, that was really powerful. For, if I may, for myself, initially when all this started happening, I was really stressed, and it got to a point where really quickly I was like, wait a minute, I either I'm going to get completely dysregulated and stressed, and I'm not going to be able to handle my two kids who are suddenly home, or I've got to dial it down and realize, what can I do? Because let's face it, I'm not out there. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not making masks, etc. But again, how can I regulate myself in these times and balance that with trying to be informed? So that's a challenge too, right?
Yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is what we can do. This is what we do have control over. It's really the only thing we have control over. I mean, except to do the sensible things that need to be done. But that's the good news in a way. And also it gives us an opportunity. We are, everyone, myself definitely included, that we use a lot of things, a lot of activities as a way to not be with ourselves. And this is an opportunity to be more connected with ourselves. I mean, it's going to be real scary at first because we use this kind of hyperactivity as a way to not feel. But it's also a tremendous benefit to be able to feel.
And what would you say to people, you talked about that one exercise of taking in the breath and you talked about feelings might come up. And what about if feelings do come up for people? They're like, what would you say?
I would say to notice the fear. And fear is comprised, emotions are comprised of three things primarily. But let's look at fear. Fear is a particular bodily sensation, twisting in our guts, the shoulders tight, or the neck, the turtle response, the neck shortening. These are all things that the body does. And they're sensations. But then we have thoughts. Oh, I'm going to get infected. Oh, all of these kind of catastrophizing thoughts. So noticing them as thoughts. Often when a thought like that comes up and I'm working with a person or just writing about it, I say, when you have that thought, preface the thought with the sentence, I have the words that I might get sick. And that allows the person to separate a little bit from the thought. In other words, the thought is not reality. The thought is just a thought. I have the thought that. And that's cognitive behavior therapy does that kind of stuff very well. But again, you have to also, or even primarily, be aware of the sensations that are underlying the emotion. And then also there may be pictures or images that come into your mind's eye. So to be able to kind of separate them out enough, and no feeling, no matter how difficult it is the end point. Mm-hmm. When we're able to be with our feelings, to touch into our feelings, they will shift, they will change, and they will ultimately be more positive and will help us move through these difficult times. Will be ways of actually creating more resilience.
In terms of, a lot of our listeners here are therapists who I would imagine now are working in terms of distance, online or telehealth in a sense.
Yep.
What would you say to them about suddenly they themselves might be, I mean, I guess everyone to a certain degree is stressed, but now you have a therapist to a certain degree who are stressed and have to manage that, and clients. Is there a difference in working one-on-one in a room, and then now we're working, like this? Maybe a client would be working
Sure.
with
Well, I mean, obviously it's not the ideal thing, but given the conditions, it may be the best thing. And when we communicate with others, it's not, I mean, whatever it is, maybe it's 5 or 10% the words. But the great majority is what we are expressing in our faces and our whole bodies and our voice. So if I am talking to you in a monotone like this and I'm not really modulating my voice, you're going to tune out very quickly, because we are programmed to pick up rhythm in people's voices. This happens in our earliest infancy, right after we're born. We are tuned to the voice, often of the mother, and that is in itself can be soothing. So even if you're on Skype or Zoom or whatever this is, to be able to, instead of talking so fast and talking blah, 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 to just connect with yourself first. Then, because that's critical, because that allows us to come in with presence. When we're there, present within ourselves and present for another, then that helps them regulate. So be aware of your own fears and your own resilience, your own strength, and use that as a way of communicating that to the person that you're working with on the, on the Skype or whatever media. Also, and you can't do this as well, of course, when you're not in person, but you'll be able to notice changes in the person's facial expression. Sometimes it happens in just milliseconds, or a change in their breath. These are all things that are indicating there's a shift going on in the person's experience. So often just bringing that to the person's attention. So you notice a spontaneous breath. And then maybe you say something like, yes, that's it. Just let that happen. And what do you begin to notice now? So you have invitational language. You have rhythmic verbal connection with the person. These kind of things can make a really, really big difference. And so I think that Skype connection is really a very valuable thing to be doing. Also, for people just to be doing that with each other, with their friends, with their colleagues, with their friends. Therapists doing it with each other, but not just therapists, everybody doing it. I mean, and to be careful not to catastrophize, to really be first with ourselves, be present with ourselves so that we're not catastrophizing, and then to share that quality, that energy with other people we care about, people we love, and people that we appreciate. All of those things, when we communicate them, really help the person settle in themselves.
Thank you for that. As we close up here and wind down, in the beginning of our talk here, you talked about, you wanted to make sure that you weren't sugarcoating things, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for the field, the trauma field, if you will, with all of this. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy to think, but here I am, I'm reaching out to you, reaching out to some of the leaders in our field at this moment to address what's going on. What are your thoughts on that, Peter?
I think there's a shift going on, a profound shift. I mean, that was, I think that's probably why they awarded me the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Psychotherapy Network, because this is now in the mainstream. It's no longer on the fringe. So this has crested. And again, every challenge also is an opportunity. Again, I don't want to sugarcoat it, but it is a way of connecting more to our core selves, again, to do things that are nourishing. As I say, to sing, to dance, to move, to cook together. Those are all activities that bring people together, and the things that humans have been doing for thousands of years.
But just if I may, just to be clear, Peter, what you're saying is it's almost vitally, those things are vitally important for our health,
our well-being. Yes,
our well-being.
Yeah. And so anyhow, the fact that we are now realizing what's important and what the missing pieces are in psychotherapy, we are able to be much more effective therapists, much more effective therapists. And then this will be helping all of our clients. And, I've even done in different situations, not like this, but after 9/11, I, did with a group of people. I had groups like a town hall meeting. And again, we did some of these kind of exercises and help people to reconnect with themselves and make a boundary from all of the fear. So this is a time where psychotherapy itself is evolving very, very rapidly. And, I think it's now, the genie's out of the box. The missing pieces are now starting to come together. So, and none too soon. Again, especially with the demands of this kind of crises.
All right, Peter. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, especially since you've got a sore throat.
Yeah. If you want, I'll read one thing that was sent to me
please.
By my friends in the mountains in Switzerland. I believe it's written by a Irish monk, an Irish brother, and the poem is called Lockdown. Yes, there is fear. Yes, there is isolation. Yes, there is panic buying. Yes, there is sickness. Yes, there is even death. But they say that in Wuhan, after so many years of noise, you can hear the birds again. They say that after just a few weeks of quiet, this is what I meant about quieting inside of ourselves, the sky is no longer thick with fumes, but blue and gray and clear. They say that in the streets of Assisi, people are singing to each other across the empty squares, keeping their windows open so that those who are alone may hear the sounds of family around them. They say that a hotel in the west of Ireland is offering free meals and delivery to the housebound. Today, a young woman I know is busy sending flyers with her number through the neighborhood so that the elders may have someone to call on. Today, churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples are preparing to welcome and to shelter the homeless, the sick, the weary. All over the world, people are slowing down and reflecting. All over the world, people are looking at their neighbors in a new way. All over the world, people are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are and how little control we really have except for our own internal states and our relationships. Poem goes on, to what really matters to love. So we pray and remember that yes, there is fear, but there does not have to be hate, and there does not have to be terror or panic. Yes, there is isolation, but there does not have to be loneliness. Yes, there is panic buying, but there does not have to be meanness. Yes, there is sickness, but it does not have to be a disease of the soul. Yes, there is even death, but there can always be a rebirth of love. Wake to the choices you make as to how you live now. Today, breathe, do the VU exercise. Listen beyond the factory noises of your panic. The birds are singing again. The sky is clearing. Spring is coming, and we are always encompassed by love. Open the windows of your soul, and though you may not be able to touch across the empty square, sing. And the poem is called Lockdown by an Irish Capuchin Franciscan brother named Richard Hendrick. So I think I just leave all of you with this, and I imagine you can find the poem online. It's really, I would say, right on the spot.
Wow, what a beautiful ending. Peter, thank you so much for being here again, and I wish you well.
To all of you, to be with yourselves, to be kind with yourselves and kind to each other. This is a time of potential great transformation.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.